Merry Christmas from Language Culture and Dr. Lou. And so let's talk about all the versions of Santa or Santa-like characters around Christmas time all around the world. Because of course, when I was a little kid growing up in the US, I figured that everybody would believe in pretty much the same Santa Claus. Um, and It turns out maybe no, maybe we don't. We all have similar versions of Santa that we believe in. Sorry about the lighting, it's not cooperating. Anyway, so I wanted to talk about that today about what versions of Santa and Santa-like characters can we see in different places around the world from different cultures around Christmas time. And of course, you've got Santa Claus himself, um, who was sort of um, made in the USA before it was the USA. And by that, I mean Santa Claus. Well, I get to how this came from some Dutch immigrants in New Amsterdam before it was New York and all that, but I'll get to that in just a minute. But of course, Santa Claus, all the things we know about him. He lives at the North Pole, and apparently he's heterosexual because he has a wife, Mrs. Claus, and also he's got all the elves who work in his workshop making the toys and everything like that. And of course, the flying reindeer, of which there are eight of them, unless you count Rudolph, the last reindeer added, pretty much. And so that's all Santa Claus. And of course, he's super famous for bringing presents to children who are good and possibly coal to children who are bad during Christmas time. Um, and yeah, so that's Santa. So, what similar or other versions of Santa do we have? Well, like I said, um, Santa Claus kind of in a way came from uh, Dutch people who migrated to New Amsterdam, which is what New York was called before it was New York, before the English took it away over, of course. Because again, the Dutch were here to what became the United States before the English colonizing. But so he's combined with someone who came from the Netherlands, lore that came from the Netherlands, and Saint Nicholas, of course, and Father Christmas. A lot of this was all melded together and gave us Santa Claus. So, who was the Dutch guy I was talking about? uh, it's pretty much looks like Santa Claus, doesn't it? Santa Claus. Santa Claus. That's he's from the Netherlands, of course, and as you can see, here he is on a rooftop trying to deliver presents to kids, going down the chimney and all that. Same thing we expect from Santa Claus, but one thing's different. That's not an elf he has with him. His little helper, his little companion's name is, well, it translates to Black Pete. And notice he's Santa Claus is riding a white horse. He always rode a white horse from house to house. But yeah, still they did go down the chimney with the presents. So Black Pete there is a helper of Santa who's pretty much there to uh, help Santa deliver presents. So he's not back at home in the workshop making toys. He's also delivering presents with Santa. And Black Pete, I thought was important to bring up because these days, in the 21st century, Black Pete can be pretty controversial because the costumes that people put on to play Black Pete involve blackface and exaggerated red lipstick and an afro wig. You know, a lot of that doesn't really fly in the 21st century anymore now, does it? but still, Black Pete was part of the lore of Sinterklaas in the Netherlands. And so had to include him here. And it's interesting to me how we have various different companions for Santa around Christmas time, not just Mrs. Claus or the elves and other traditions. We have Black Pete here, for instance. And again, he's called Black Pete, but he's a good guy. He helps Santa Claus deliver presents. And so, like I mentioned, Santa Claus, he was he sort of became Santa Claus when the Dutch arrived here in what would become New York State and the United States eventually. Um, and they kind of merged him with Father Christmas, who's another Santa figure we're going to talk about in just a second. But and in France, Father Christmas is said Père Noël, right? And Père Noël or Father Christmas, uh, he was not always the gift giving type. Like I said, he got merged with Saint Nicholas to make to become what we in America know as Santa Claus. What Father Christmas brought, Père Noël, what he brought was merriness, right? The Christmas spirit, making people merry and all that. That was more that what he brought in the beginning. He wasn't originally a gift bringer, but he evolved into that. So these days, Père Noël, pretty much the same figure as Santa Claus. He brings presents, although uh, you know we have yeah, not only just this Santa figure here, who was Father Christmas, who came from different lore. Father Christmas lore is even older than Saint Nicholas lore. Who, by the way, Saint Nicholas is based on that lore is based on a real life Greek bishop who is known for his generosity and uh, private, well, secret gift giving and all that. So that's sort of where the gift giving part of Santa came from. And then combine that with Father Christmas's merriness and all that. And that sort of came together to, in the US, come together and make Santa Claus. And these days, Père Noël, Father Christmas, he is evolved as well. He's more like just another Santa Claus figure now. They're kind of all the same guy with red hat, red suit, reindeer, North Pole, bringing presents, all the same thing. So they've sort of all evolved into similar Santa. And the interesting thing about that, remember how I said that Santa always seems to have companions? Well, Père Noël, Father Christmas had a companion who was, whereas Father Christmas was there to bring merriness and eventually presents. Père Fouettard, he was the one who was there to punish the kids who are bad, right? And so in the picture below me and right below where it says Père Fouettard, the guy in the red is uh, good old Father Christmas, aka Saint Nicholas. Similar lore eventually came together. That the guy in the black is Père Fouettard, and fouet in France is a whip, and fouetter is to whip. So this would be a guy who's there to whip or spank the children who are bad. So I love this how in many kinds of lore around Santa and Santa figures, um, may make somebody else into the bad guy who punishes the bad kids so that Santa and Father Christmas can be all good and all nice, all cheery, all merry, all that. So yeah, so that's Père Noël and Père Fouettard. And just like Father Christmas had somebody else to go around whipping and spanking kids to punish them, similar thing that St. Nicholas had going on in Germany. And of course, Krampus is the name of the Punisher here in question. And he's not just Germany, he's also elsewhere in Central Europe. A lot of times he accompanies St. Nicholas. And again, St. Nicholas, he's the one who brings the Mary and the presents and all that. Whereas Krampus, he's the one who does all the punishing. And what I find interesting about Krampus is he is shown to be a demon type figure. Like he's part goat, part human, part goat, and yeah, he appears very demonic and whatnot. But again, this is how we got Saint Nicholas to be 100% good guy because Krampus is the one who's going to come around and punish you. And yeah, that would be scary. I think being scared of that little demon would be a good way to keep kids behaving nicely. As or same as the bad Santa who will come whip you, right? Anyway, but yeah, so that's another example of a punishing figure around Christmas, so that Saint Nicholas there could be the super good guy. And so, in addition to that, we've got uh, Nicholas, who is pretty much he is the Hungarian Santa Claus. He's based also on the lore of Saint Nicholas, um, and hold on, excuse me. He's again, he's a total Santa figure. He's based around Saint Nicholas. Brings presents to kids who are good on Christmas time and all that. So that's kind of cool that there's so many different versions of Santa Claus, and they get pretty similar sometimes, not 100% the same, but pretty similar. So he would be the Hungarian one, and not just Hungary, but elsewhere in Central Europe. But you know who else they had in Central Europe? They had another present giver who is in contrast to St. Nicholas, and that person is called Christkind. And this character, who looks at like it's spelled Christ kind, Christkind, that's because Martin Luther, you know, the leader of the Protestants way back in the day, he invented Christkind. And what Christkind translates loosely as is Christ child. So he's pretty much, so this figure is pretty much a representing baby Jesus, right? And Christkind is an angel, always portrayed as an angelic sort of young woman, blonde, so blonde hair, angel wings, often comes with the crown of different sorts. And so again, this character went around as an alternative, as a contrast to Saint Nicholas, because she was going ahead and delivering presents to all the good kids around Christmas time. So that to me is funny because this is not a figure that I ever learned of anything about growing up. And this is me as an adult learning a little more about Christkind and knowing that Santa's not the only present giver in this lore. So that to me is very interesting. Excuse me. Sorry about that. Couldn't be helped. So moving on, we also have in Finland, so Northern Europe, Scandinavia, you got Julupoki, who is, as you can see again, has evolved into a regular old Santa figure, with, you know, riding a sleigh with a reindeer and all this same sort of deal. Um, and but the thing is, this word roughly translates as Yule goat, and that's where the lore came from. Way back traditionally, this person, this character look like a goat, like you can see in the one little picture right under me. And originally, that goat was more about punishing the bad kids on Christmas as opposed to rewarding the good kids. But that goat, of course, evolved over time. The lore evolved into pretty much regular Santa, right, a little more on par with what people think of when we think of Saint Nicholas or Father Christmas or anything. Um, and yeah, I find the funny part being that he's named Yule Goat, aka Christmas Goat, and that he used to actually be a goat once upon a time. So that to me, it's pretty funny that in Finland they have this goat thing, which by the way, remember Krampus kind of looked like a goat, a demonic thing. So that's kind of funny. I wonder if there's a real relation between the two of them in lore somewhere. Possibly. But Julapuki, of course, went from naughty to nice. Now he's pretty much a good Santa, right? And no longer really as often represented as a goat, but still there's some representations of that there. But now that we want him to be all nice all the time, it's kind of easier to picture that out of a jolly fat old man. Anyway, and so speaking of the Yule goat, which is again what this word translates to, in Iceland, they have some people called Yule lads. And these are not really the same thing as Santa's elves, Santa's helpers, and whatnot. The Yule lads from Iceland, they're troll-like figures. They're little like trolls, very small, so maybe kind of gremlin types because they're very mischievous and troll-like and all that. And so the lore goes that they would live in the mountains, and then they would come down from the mountains to punish any kids who were being bad, meaning to prank them or to scare them. And so they're not really so happy-go-lucky as the elves who in Santa lore where they're just there making presents. These little guys were actually kind of like Krampus or kind of like Père Fouettard. They were doing the punishing for the kids who were bad. And I think they specifically went after kids who did not have new Christmas clothes. Um, so anyway, that's a little judgmental, but hey, but I had to bring them up because, and there are 13 of them for the 13 days of Christmas. So they're pretty much 13 Christmas trolls, more or less, and they're known as the Yule lads, and they're Icelandic. They're from Iceland. So one more figure I wanted to make sure I brought up before we end this discussion on Santa-like creatures was, in Italy they have this witch named Befana, and she's again, she's a witch, so she looks nothing like Santa, does she? But still, around Christmas time, she goes around bringing presents to people. And she doesn't actually do this. She's not doing December 24th over the 25th like we do in the US for when Santa comes. And she's not doing December 5th into December 6th like a lot of European places do for St. Nicholas Day. She is coming around on January 6th for Epiphany, the night before Epiphany, which is the end of the Christmas time. But still, that's funny to me. I wanted to bring her up because once again, uh, Santa is not the only figure that we have bringing presents around, right? We talked about Christkind, that little angel, angelic girl bringing presents around, and now we have what seems like the opposite of an angel, a witch, a witch who flies around on a broomstick to bring presents to everybody on, um, well, to end the Christmas time there. So I really didn't want to finish our discussion of our Christmas time present Brenton figures without mentioning her because very important to see all perspectives. And again, Merry Christmas and thank you so much for watching this little video. Please do give it a like. That will help it in the algorithm. And yeah, looking very much forward to talking to you again in my next video. And so until then, Merry Christmas. Bye bye.